with Céline Duval, who's been for the last few years assistant professor in Paris Descartes University and just got a full professor position in Lille University starting in September. So, Céline, please.
Yes. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to full screen. Okay. First, so I start. First, I'd like to thank Christophe for organizing this symposium. And I'm going to present a joint work with Eric Lusson and Christophe on a model relying on OX processes to mimic the inhibitive action of one population of neuron onto another one. So first, I will start by recalling some well-known results on nonlinear OX processes, and it will enable to fix a little bit notations. So we are considering a family of counting processes, Z, which are going to be of OX type. And the relation with neurons is the following. An important information on a neuron is the time of the different spikes of the neuron. And it's this quantity, only this quantity, that we will model with these counting processes Z. So the OX processes are defined through their stochastic intensities. So the intensity of the neuron Zi will be denoted by lambda I. And this quantity can be interpreted as follows. The probability that the neuron Zi has a jump between t and t plus delta t knowing the past is lambda I. And what makes a counting process a OX process is the following shape of the intensity. So the intensity of the neuron lambda I depends on the past of the trajectory Zi, but also depends on the behavior of every other neuron in the family. And it depends on the past through this integral, depending on the synaptic kernel H that can depend on G and I. And to ensure the overall positivity of this quantity, we may add a positive function phi that can also depend on I. So these processes have been well studied. We mentioned the following paper about Delat, Fournier, and Hoffman, which studied in detail this model, establishing existent and many other results. And a result that will be also important in the sequel is the mean field framework. So it's when you look at what happens when you let the size of the population grow to infinity, then you need to modify a little bit the synaptic kernel to ensure consistency. And in the midfield framework, what we can establish is the following, when at the limit when n gets large, then every neuron in the family behaves independently from each other, but that they all have a common behavior, which is of inhomogeneous Poisson process type. And the limit intensity, which is no longer stochastic, is solution of an equation of this type, a sort of a convolution equation. An important case is the case where phi here is linear of the shape phi of x equal to mu plus x, where mu is the instantaneous probability that the process presents a jump. This case is important because then we can say a lot of things on the limit behavior of the intensity lambda when the time, this time, gets large. And there is an important phase transition phenomenon. So I mention it because I will give you this kind of result in the sequel, and it's a kind of benchmark here. This result states that in the linear case, when t gets large, depending on the L1 norm of the synaptic kernel H here, either their intensity converges to a finite value. So when the L1 norm is strictly smaller than 1, we can say that the OX is subcritical. And if this L1 norm is strictly larger than 1, then at the limit, the intensity explodes. Okay. Initially, what we wanted to do was to use Hox processes to model inhibition, so it's not new. There are papers considering a family of Hox processes to model inhibition. And what is usually done is considering synaptic functions h that can take negative values. So whenever h is negative, it will inhibit so here, if you take H negative, the neuron G will inhibit the neuron Y. The problem, one problem being that when you do this, you need the function phi is really important to ensure the overall positivity of the intensity. And even in the linear case, the long-time dynamic is not longer tractable. So what we propose is the following. So from the beginning, we consider a context where we have two populations, one population A of excitatory neuron and a population B of inhibitory neuron. For convenience, every neuron in the family will be still denoted by Z, and the first neuron will correspond to population A and the last one to population B. Alpha will denote the proportion of population A in the whole family. And typically, you can think of alpha being 0.8. And we consider a shape of intensities between A and B that are of this type. They are coupled. So we look first at the intensity of population B because it's quite common. So there is first a function phi B taking into account the contribution of all the neurons of population B to the intensity of B, and a term that can be interpreted as excitatory because it's positive, corresponding to the contribution of every neuron in population A to the intensity of B. We think that this model can model inhibition because of the shape of the intensity of A. So we have a classical term of the contribution of all neurons in population A to the intensity of A. And inhibition is multiplicative and as follows. So you consider a function phi B to A that will be decreasing starting from 0 and vanishing at infinity. And there you put the contribution of the neurons of population B, and you see that when population B has a high activity, this term can be very large. And when this term is large, this quantity phi B to A can be very small, and it will diminish the intrinsic intensity of population A by a proportion given by this term. In the sequel, I will give you examples where phi A, phi B, and phi A to B are linear, because then many computations can be made. Just to mention rapidly that under classical conditions on the kernel H and on the functions, every function phi A, phi B, etc., assuming that they are Lipschitz, we can establish existence of a family of Hox processes having these intensities. So we cannot apply directly the results, for instance, the results of Delatfournier-Hoffmann to ensure existence, because the product of two Lipschitz functions may not always be Lipschitz. We also adapted results in the mean field framework, and as expected, when the size of the global population N grows to infinity, so then the size of both population A and B will also grow to infinity, then as expected, at the limit, we have a typical behavior of every neuron behaving independently from each other and all having an inhomogeneous Poisson process behavior where the intensities remain coupled and of this type. And also we can measure at which rate a neuron in the Hawk's model gets close when n gets large to a limit, the limit Poisson process. And it says that uniformly in T and uniformly in N, the gap between the Hawk's process and the limit is in 1/√n times the constant that depends on T, and with additional constraints on the parameters of the model, we can exhibit that the constant is of the order of T. And now what I will detail is a sort of, so we will focus on the mean field model, so n is infinity, and give a kind of zoology of what we can say in the linear model. So the only source of nonlinearity is the inhibition here, of the behavior of the intensities when the time is large. So we just introduce some notation, which are not unexpected with what I recalled on the phase transition for Hawk's processes at the beginning. We will denote by kp 1 to 4 the L1 norms of each synaptic kernels H1 to H4, weighted with the size of the population A and B respectively in the overall population. So what is relevant is not the L1 norm of H, but alpha times the L1 norm of H. And we can consider 4 different settings. So the last one are the most interesting ones, but the first one can be interpreted as control cases. So the first one is when kappa 2 and kappa 4 are 0, which means that this term is 0 and this term is constant equal to 1. So it corresponds to a case where population A behaves independently from B and population B behaves independently from A. So then we can recover the classical well-known results on nonlinear, on linear Hawk's processes. A little bit more interesting is a case where there is no inhibition, so this term is 1, but there is an excitatory behavior of population A to population B. The contrary, where there is inhibition here, but no excitatory action of population A to population B. And the most interesting case where everything is coupled and you have both inhibition from B to E and retroaction from A to B. And I will detail the different behavior at the limit depending on these different parameters. So first, as expected in the fully decoupled case, so when population A and B do not interact, then we recover the classical result, which says that if the L1 norm is smaller than 1, then at the limit, the intensity, when T gets large, converges to a value which is well determined, and otherwise, the intensity grows to infinity. The case where you add retroaction from population A to population B, so you add excitatory action of population A to population B, then as expected, since population A do not receive any feedback from population B, the phase transition is unchanged. So if Kp1 is smaller than 1, then the intensity of A converges, otherwise it diverges to infinity. But the effect on population B is a little bit more interesting. The first thing is the second line. Whenever population A is supercritical, then whatever the intrinsic behavior of population B is always supercritical. When population A is subcritical, which is that its intensity converges, then if population B alone is supercritical, its intensity will grow to infinity. But if it's subcritical, then population B will remain subcritical. But what is interesting is that the limit intensity of B is modified by the action of the population A, and we have an additional term here at the limit that depends on the limit behavior of the intensity of A. We have a similar pattern if you have inhibition from B to A, but no retroaction. It says that the phase transition for population B is unchanged. So the limit is depending on either Kp3 is smaller or larger than 1. And the interesting facts are the following. Whenever population B alone is supercritical, then its intensity goes to infinity. But then whatever the behavior of A alone, the limit intensity of A is 0. So when B is supercritical, basically it will always kill the population A, even if population A alone is supercritical. The other thing is when population B alone is subcritical, then the action of inhibition on population A is that it modifies the limits, the frontier of the phase transition, which is 1 if population A is alone. Then the new frontier for the phase transition is this term, Kp1 times phi B to A at a term that depends on the limit of the intensity B. And you can see that since phi B to A is supposed to be smaller than 1, then strictly smaller than 1, it occurs that you may have population A alone that is supercritical, but the action of inhibition brings back population A to subcriticality. And similarly, in this case, the limit intensity of population A is affected by the inhibitive action of population B. And you can see that here you recover the limit intensity of population B. For the last case, which is the most interesting when you both have inhibition and retroaction, it's more difficult to give very explicit formulas for the limit, but we can still exhibit 3 behaviors. The first thing states that whenever there is inhibition, the limit intensity of population, not only the limit, but the intensity of population A always remains bounded, so it cannot be supercritical. We recover the fact that whenever population B is supercritical, then the intensity of population A gets killed. And the last thing is that whenever population B is subcritical, then the convergence of either lambda A or lambda B imply the convergence of both lambda A and lambda B. And we can characterize the limit intensities of lambda A and lambda B. The limit intensity of lambda B can be obtained as a fixed point of this function only depending on the parameter of the models. And the limit intensity of lambda A depend on the parameter of the model and the limit intensity of population B. We can exhibit sufficient condition for this convergence to occur, but we do not have a necessary condition. Just to illustrate rapidly with a numerical example. So here we are in a context where population A alone is supercritical, but we have inhibition here. Kp2 is non-zero. You have in blue the intensity of population B, and in red the intensity of population A. You have in plain line the limit through intensities lambda A and lambda B, and in more oscillatory lines the estimated intensities on a population of either 100 or 1000 neurons. And what you can see is what was expected, that is, since there is inhibition, the limit intensity of population A seems to converge. And it seems that the mean field framework works, that is, estimated intensity on the family of neurons well approximate the intensity of the limit in homogeneous Poisson process. To continue, just to give a statistical illustration of these results, In fact, it seems to be easy to propose a statistical test to test if you have two family of neurons that you can observe a neuron for population A and you understand how to handle neurons of population B, then you can perform a test to test if population B has or not an inhibitive effect on population A. And you can do so with this model because we have two ingredients. The first one being that there is a natural order between the limit intensities in the different contexts. So it's easy to say with the former result that the intensity when population A is not inhibited by A is always larger than the limit intensity when there is inhibition but no retroaction, which is itself larger to the case where there is both inhibition and retroaction. And the second ingredient is that using some results of Suzanne and Eva and this paper, we can establish a central limit theorem of this form, where L hat is an estimator of the limit intensity of population A. And with these two ingredients, you can perform a test, for instance, as follows. You suppose that you can plug an electrode in one neuron of population A and you record it in two different contexts. The first one, when you give a toxin to suppress the inhibition action of population B. The second one, a little bit later, without the toxin to suppress the inhibition of population B. And then you look at the estimated limit intensities of the neuron, estimated with the measure you get divided by the length of the experiment. And you look at the gap between the two measures. And if this gap is too high depending on calibrated through the central limit theorem, and if it's too high, you decide that there is inhibition or there is not inhibition. And this test is consistent with asymptotic level A that you can fix. The last thing that we wanted to show you is that this model can also be used to numerically present, numerically mimic an oscillatory behavior of the intensities. So it's only an heuristic. We didn't prove that in the limit model, there are oscillations, but numerically it works. And the intuition is the following. So we take again the limit intensities in the mean field framework. We remain in the linear case. And we consider a case where the intrinsic intensity of population A is very large. The one of population B is very small, take for instance 0, and you consider that the synaptic kernels H all have compact supports, denoted by theta. And then the heuristic is the following. When you start from t equal to 0, then the intensity of A starts from its initial value μ(a), which is very high, and the intensity of B is close to μb, which is very small. If you wait a little bit, since the intensity of A is very high, it will excitate the intensity of B. And since there is feedback here, this term will get large. And if you wait a little bit, the intensity of lambda B will also be high. But if this intensity is high, since there is inhibition here from B to A, and if you consider a function phi B to A which has this shape, so it's close to 1 on a large interval and then drops to the value not 0, but something very small, then if lambda B gets too high, you will be in this area. And this term phi b to A here will be very small, and the intensity of A will be killed and be very close to 0. So now you have intensity lambda B, which is high, and intensity lambda A, which is very small. But since here the kernels have compact supports, if you wait long enough, it will no longer feel the influence of A, and then the intensity of B will go back to its usual activity mu B, which is very small. And since there is no longer inhibition here, the intensity of A will go back to its normal high activity mu A. And then we are back to 1. And if you iterate, oscillation should appear. And numerically, we look at this context. So here is the first case where we have numerically oscillations. So still in red, the limit intensity lambda A, and in gray, the limit intensity lambda B, and the approximated intensities obtained through 1,000 family of Hawkes processes satisfying the model represented. So here it's in a context when where population A, even inhibited, is supercritical. And another context when you can see oscillation is when the one I presented in the intuition, when the activity of A alone is very high. Okay, so I will now conclude. So we have a model relying on Hawkes processes, which is flexible and enabled to mimic inhibition. Where computation are tractable for the long time behavior in the mean field framework, and for which we can provide numerical evidence of oscillation, but we haven't looked at the proof. And it's available, there is a preprint available on arXiv, and that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Céline, for this nice talk. Are there any questions? I guess I can open the, if I learn how to do it, let everyone
yes,
talk,
there is a question.
Yeah, Quentin?
Yes, hello, thank you very much for this very nice talk. I've got a question concerning propagation of chaos. You said that under some assumptions, the speed of convergence is given by Ct divided by square root of n, and Ct is linear on T.
Yes, but there are many, no, it's not always true. So when you only have one population, the condition is that what I call kappa, the Lipschitz coefficient of phi times the L1 norm of H should be strictly smaller than 1, so in a subcritical context. Here, we require that and worse. So the condition basically ensures that everyone is subcritical, and the constants to get that on the condition are not optimal. But we can exhibit constant for which is true, but basically it's everyone is subcritical and more.
Ah, okay. So you cannot expect metastability in these settings, I guess.
Metastability, I'm not very familiar with.
Typically, a situation where the mean field equations admit multiple fixed points, but where the particle system has a unique invariant probability measure.
I won't answer because I'm not. Eric would answer much better than me.
Okay, thank you.
It's true that you can be in a situation where you have two fixed points for this. I wouldn't say that you can have this metastable state for this kind of system, but I don't know. we haven't looked into this case.
Also, I was wondering if you have any idea for the proof of the existence of periodic solution in the setting you described us, or
Yes.
Maybe the tool that you use for in your case with Laplace transform, we haven't looked at it, but it's the problem is that it's non-linear. So tools like Laplace transform should not be so easy to use. But okay, this is something that we have to look into, but we haven't done.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's one question.
There is a question in the chat.
On the chat, yeah. So quickly.
No, we didn't. In fact, when everything is coupled, the case where inhibiting neurons inhibit themselves. Yeah. Yes, we could. We didn't look at this case. We only look at the case where only population B inhibits population A. But we could add a similar term, which is of the same type, multiplicative, that says when lambda B gets too high, its intensity is diminished by a factor term. But we didn't look at that. But indeed, it would be interesting to look if computation goes the same in this case.
Okay, thank you, Céline and Eric, for his information and to the audience for the questions. So I